So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest for tonight. That is Charlie Davis. Charlie's super cool. So he's run all sorts of businesses. He's a very seasoned entrepreneur at this point. He's a father of 4. He homeschools, just all around great guy. And I'm super excited to have a conversation with him. So I'd love to start off with your first business.
Sure.
So I'm sure that's a fun story. Tell me about it.
First businesses are always great stories.
Yeah.
So my first company, I say my first real company, I was one of those kids that was constantly starting businesses. I used to buy, candy in bulk in Walmart and take it to summer camp and sell it by the piece. I was constantly trying to start a company. My first actual business when I was a freshman at LSU, a friend and I started a newspaper called the Tiger Weekly. And it published continuously for almost 20 years, believe it or not, for about 2 decades.
Wow.
And it changed names a little bit over the time. But, the thing I remember about that business is I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, I didn't even know what questions to ask.
Mm-hmm.
We needed capital to start the business. We needed a computer. Back then computers were like $10,000.
Oh, wow.
Really, really expensive. And so we need to borrow some money. Great. How do you do that? I was like, I don't know, but there's a store over there that does payday lending. I guess maybe we should go. We should go over there. And so guys knock on the door and sit down and say, we have this business plan. We're gonna start this newspaper. It's gonna be great. It's full color. Back then the paper was black and white at LSU. But this full color sports section. And the guy looks at me like I have 3 holes in my head. It's like, yeah, we're not gonna give you money to start a business. And I was like, well, that's not what your sign says. The sign says, if I want to borrow money, this is where I should come. And I need some money. He's like, well, I'll go check, but I'm pretty sure we don't do that. So he goes in the back of the room. He comes back and says, no, yeah, we don't do that. I mean, can you imagine if I had actually started a company with payday lending? What crazy that would be? So we funded that company by going to the campus federal credit union and saying, hey, I really need a computer for school. And like, oh, great, yeah, we'll give you 10 grand for that. I was like, really?
Wow.
Yeah, amazing. So we take the cash and bought a computer, started selling ads, laying it out. And it was an incredible experience to write articles, sell ads, hire staff, approve the blue line at midnight or 2 a.m, pick up the paper in a U-Haul truck, bring it to campus and put it out. And most weeks, most days, the sun would be coming up before I was done putting out that stupid newspaper.
Wow.
It was a labor of love and then some. And I absolutely loved it. And I don't think I've ever been so excited in my life, except for maybe when my first child was born, when I was able to hire somebody to put out the newspaper and I didn't have to do it. That was a marquee moment.
Wow. Was there a big takeaway for you from running that?
The biggest takeaway I had is building companies are really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I think experience is one of the best ways to do it. I'm a big fan of reading lots of books, going to lots of events like this one. It's always better to learn on someone else's dime, but it helps to learn on your own dime at times. I'm part of a group called EO, the Entrepreneurs Organization. It's one of the largest entrepreneurial groups in the world. I think there's probably 14,000 members. And it's just this continuous learning experience about how to be a better person, a better dad, a better entrepreneur, and make it work. We're always, you spend a lifetime learning and looking back and saying, man, I can't believe I did that. Or, I can't believe I sold that Bitcoin, or I can't believe I didn't do this, right? We all have regrets, but
yeah.
No one goes through life doing it perfect the first time. And so I think it's important as an entrepreneur to have a healthy respect for the lessons you learn. And that's how you get the funny stories, right?
It's true. No funny stories without funny failures.
Exactly.
So what was the next big thing for you after Tiger Weekly?
So from Tiger Weekly, I got really involved in politics here, and I started working on causes I cared about, and actually dropped out of school. So I dropped out of LSU. I was just bored to death, unfortunately. And I moved to Washington, D.C., and I spent several years there. I eventually went to Colorado, lived in Vail for a while. Back in D.C., this was probably 99, 2000, and I worked for a .com, or .gon as we called it. I'm not sure, most of you look younger, but back in the late 90s, the internet, Web 1.0 was booming, right? And so everybody had a .com, and I worked for a .com called voter.com, which was an amazing experience. And I started a company called Liquid Politics and a company called Digital Donations. And back then I had a business that would process online contributions for nonprofits and political campaigns across the country.
Okay.
And our biggest challenge is people say, well, who would want to raise money online? What a silly, what a silly idea. Why would we need a website? You know, I think the company I worked for right before that had a big meeting and decided, yeah, this whole website thing wasn't going to last. We didn't need a website.
Yeah, the internet's probably not going to stick around.
Yeah, but that's what people thought in the late 90s was we didn't need a website.
Wow.
And why would we raise money online? And that was our biggest struggle is that the industry was so nascent that it didn't have any traction. And that's another important lesson that I learned multiple times is sometimes being early can be the same as being wrong, right? So nowadays there are multiple billion-dollar businesses doing exactly what I was doing 20 years ago. It's just a little too early.
Do you think that's because of a perception gap with the customers or something else?
Just timing, you know, there's just timing.
Yeah, all about the timing sometimes.
Right, there's a reason that we went from, you know, MySpace to Facebook, right? One was just too early and one was just right. And so there are lots of people chasing ideas out there, but execution is really, really hard, and you can't control timing beyond when you get involved.
That's true.
You know, we're with this amazing company called Moxey right now, and we feel like we have perfect timing. But 10 years ago, you know, would have been too early, and probably 3 years from now it'll be too late. But yeah, the Tiger Weekly, those early businesses were amazing experiences for me, and you know, I'm still in touch with people that I work with even in the .com days.
Wow.
You know, I love to work on projects where you build lasting relationships where, you know, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you can call or text that person and they're going to be there for you. You know, that's when you know you have a good team.
Yeah. And then, so you were involved with Mastery Prep.
I was.
And you were co-founder of that. What was the story behind that?
So one of the things I've done a lot is work in education reform. You know, I had a really interesting experience from a education perspective. When I was a kid, we went to some really early sort of private schools. Then my parents, like so many people, you know, moved out to the country for better school. So they moved to Ascension Parish, which has, you know, some of the better public schools in the state. And then I went to a boarding school called the Louisiana School, sort of a statewide boarding school or statewide magnet school for my last 2 years. And then from there, you know, I went to LSU. And so I had this really unique experience where I had a couple of different types of schools and then a big state university. And I just came away feeling like education is broken.
Yeah.
You know, just on the most fundamental level possible, right? We have royally messed up education.
Couldn't agree more.
I began to think sometimes that, unfortunately, too many kids in Louisiana will be better off. So if you think about it, if you go to school in every state, not just our state, but if you're a kid in school for a decade, right? That's six figures, right? We're going to spend $100,000 in your education, about $10,000 a year, right? Somewhere between 100 and 150,000. I thought, wow, what would happen if, you know, we gave a kindergartner a $150,000 annuity and a library card and turned them loose in the world? Like, how many people would be better off with that, you know, as opposed to going to school? Now, there's some amazing schools out there, don't get me wrong, but I just felt like education was broken on a very, very, very fundamental level. And so I spent a lot of time trying to fix it, working different projects. And we'd had some successes and some failures, but it was a massive, massive undertaking. And through that, I met Craig, who was the original designer. It wasn't called Mastery Prep back then; it was called ACT Mastery. And so Craig was just brilliant. I mean, he had gotten. I met him at a kid's birthday party, and you know, I've been starting businesses for so long. I'm like, if you have a business, hey, call Charlie and see what he thinks about it. You know, so I'm constantly getting people who call me and ask me opinions on starting companies or asking for help, which I do all the time, and I love it. I love helping people start businesses. And so Craig was talking about his dream was to kind of compete with the Princeton Review to help people have a better ACT score. Yeah. And my first thought was, well, that's a really, really competitive market. Yeah. Right? How are you gonna differentiate yourself? And then he very casually mentioned, as if it wasn't a big deal at all, that he had gotten a perfect score on the ACT and the SAT when he was in high school. And I said, wow, I think we could do something with that. Yeah. And so back then, the company wasn't even selling to schools yet. It was still just, you know, sort of trying to sell to nonprofits. And so we had a very specific sort of go-to-market plan that focused on the intersection of large public schools where the principals were highly motivated for their students to get better ACT scores. And so we took Craig's gift at helping kids get a better score. And to this day, you know, he's a machine. Like, there's very few people in the country probably better and more equipped to help you improve your ACT score. So we coupled that with my institutional experience about how education works, what the funding process is like, and just went after that very specific market. And it blew up, went from 100,000 or so to a few million.
Wow.
Pretty quickly. It's still growing.
Yeah, that's massive growth.
There's still a nexus. It's still growing. It's an amazing business. And one of the reasons it's amazing is because the product is amazing, joined with the fact that we identified a very specific niche that was sort of a blue ocean strategy.
Nice. Let's move on to Moxey.
Yeah,
so what you're working on now. So for the audience, what exactly is Moxey? What is your business model?
So if you think about it, there are two ways a business can buy something, right? Whether you're this restaurant, and this is a phenomenal restaurant, by the way. I've been friends with John for many, many years, and I love taking my family out here. I love coming out here. So if you're watching online, come out here to Estrema Brewery. It is an incredible experience, sort of a hidden gem here just south of Baton Rouge. So businesses have two ways to buy things, right? There's the normal way, which is just to pay for it. Cash, credit card, what have you. But there's another way, which is to trade for it, which means that if you're a restaurant, you might trade gift cards for legal advice, right? Or if you're a lawyer, you might do legal advice for dental work. And this happens all the time. And some estimates say that as much as 20% of the worldwide economy could be based on some form of non-cash transaction. So there's two things. You can buy something, right? Or you can trade for it. And what Moxey is a third alternative. We try to take the convenience of cash with the benefits of barter, the benefits of direct barter. So when you pay cash for something, it's simple. There's lots of convenience, right? That's how you do it the majority of the time, right? But there's a reason that most companies in the world engage in direct barter. The most famous barter deal that I like to talk about is Pepsi. And so PepsiCo traded billions of dollars with a B, billions of dollars of soda concentrate for Russian vodka and Soviet ocean freighters.
Really?
Right? Yeah, and they sold the vodka and they leased the ships out, right? And that's a huge example of a multi-billion-dollar transaction. But businesses are highly incentivized to trade, right? If I'm this restaurant and I need $5,000 worth of legal services, well, if I write a check for $5,000, that's one thing, right? But if I can give somebody else $5,000 worth of my gift cards, right, for $5,000 worth of legal services, what's happened? Well, I've got the same legal services, but I've also got a guaranteed revenue source that's going to come back over time. And so what Moxey is, it's a network of thousands of businesses who want both, who want the convenience of cash and the benefits of direct barter. So we have Moxey credit cards and our entire Moxey currency. And so believe it or not, in the greater Baton Rouge area, there's more than 1,000 businesses that accept Moxey.
That's a lot.
Payment, right? So when my guy cuts my grass, when I get my teeth cleaned, when I've got 4 kids and I'm into braces, unfortunately, right? When I pay for the braces, which are surprisingly expensive, I take my wife to dinner, we go on vacations, we patronize businesses that accept Moxey dollars. And that's what our network is all about. It's all about helping small business owners grow. And by providing the convenience of cash and the benefits of direct barter, we do two things. We help those businesses get new revenue because all the Moxey members are highly incentivized to save their cash, which is harder to get, and spend on Moxey. So they visit those businesses first, but we also improve their revenue and we improve their cash flow. And so it is an incredible tool for small business. In fact, that's how I first discovered it. I didn't invent this idea. Obviously, barter has been around for centuries, for millennia. And so one of my previous companies was called GatorWorks, and we were a web development and graphic design firm here in Baton Rouge. And Brian, my business partner, joined what was called Partners One, which was the early version of Moxey. Nice. And he was telling me all about it. He was all excited. And I said, Brian, let me stop you. I said, this is America. You cannot have your own money. That is illegal. What are you talking about? And what are these little pretend checks for, right? And so, but as it turned out, you would take these paper checks and you would go to a restaurant or you would go buy something and you would write a check. And at first I thought, this is the most ridiculous idea I've ever heard of. And I paid no attention to it, frankly. But over time, we did more and more business and attracted more and more customers, and we were starting to pay for signs, and it really made a difference. So when you're, for those of you entrepreneurs, cash flow is critical. Yes. We say a lot that cash flow is important, but cash flow is really, really important. And what happens to most businesses, if they're fortunate enough to succeed, the faster you grow, the less cash you have, right? Most businesses don't generate cash on the fly. It takes time even when Mastery Prep was going, the faster we were growing, the less cash you would have, because it just takes time for your customers to pay you, especially when you're selling large enterprise clients are used to paying 60, 90 days in advance, maybe 120 days, right? So you might have made $5 million in sales and you're sitting on $5 million of accounts receivable. So from an accounting perspective, it looks amazing, but your banker's calling you, hey, you don't have money to make payroll, right? So cash flow is important. Moxey helps businesses manage their cash flow better because we can save them thousands of dollars a month in cash expenses that can be converted to Moxey expenses.
Yeah,
right?
and businesses are hungry beasts.
Yeah, and the power of the network is as they spend those Moxey dollars, all of our businesses are incentivized to come and do business with them to pay that back, right? So it's a tool that we have improved upon radically, but not something we've invested in. So direct barter has been around for a millennium, and what we're doing is scaling something so that it can be a better experience. It's the concept that the network is equal to the square of the number of nodes, right? It's the old computer science concept. And so every time a new business joins Moxey, the whole network becomes more valuable. So that's what we're doing, is helping those small businesses grow.
You're bringing the scalability of the modern era into the economics of barter.
Yeah, and it feels like using the Amex Black Card. Jack Heaton's here, our CTO. He's done an incredible job building the Moxey app. There's pay with Moxey QR codes. You can send. We wanted to make so easy buying something on Moxey will accidentally do it.
Yeah. Let's move on to inflation. So
sure.
You guys are...
That's a big jump there.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry. Completely changing topics. Before we get into Web3, I'd like to kind of cover some of the things that are a bit broken in the current economy.
How much time do you have?
We've got time for now.
One of my favorite quotes about inflation is it is the most dangerous evil in the world that not one man can recognize, right? I mean, it's just this constant suck that can really, really destroy an economy. And it's in the press a lot right now because I think, CPI, which is inflation minus all the things you actually buy, right? The consumer price index spiked like I think 6 or 8% recently. So prices
a good amount.
Are through the roof, right? I was in Memphis the other day. We sponsored a golf tournament for our Memphis Moxey community. And we just stopped to buy some gas. And I wasn't really paying attention. I looked over and I could have sworn gas was $2.50 a month ago. And now it's $4. I was like, oh my goodness, like that's a massive, massive increase. And so what happens with inflation is assets appreciate in value first. And we all get excited. And then our expenses appreciate and we all get mad. And the more assets you have relative to the expenses you have, the better inflation is for you, right? Financially. And the higher your expenses are relative to your assets, the worse inflation is for you, right? So if you think about Warren Buffett, for example, right? If his assets go from a gazillion to 2 gazillion, he's pumped, right?
Yeah.
His expenses can't possibly go that much, right? And so the wealthier you are, the more assets you have and the more debt you have. And so your assets appreciate and your debts depreciate in value. So you're literally printing money by doing nothing, okay? And the lower you are in the food chain, the closer you are to paycheck, right? If you don't own your own house, if you're paying rent, you might not have many assets and you probably have very little debt except for credit card debt, right? Because you can't get low interest loans. And so your expenses are constantly going up and your paycheck's not keeping up. And so the thing that's so dangerous about inflation, the reason that it gets talked about so much is it's like a cancer. It is this silent killer that can destroy an economy, but it impacts everybody very differently. So our incentives, there's a misalignment in our incentives, right? The wealthier you are, the older you are, the wealthier you are, the more assets you are, you don't care about inflation. You get that it's not good, but you don't personally feel any pain. In fact, you probably feel a benefit from it.
So it helps some.
It helps some.
It hurts others.
And it hurts others. And it could be, I would think, imagine that everyone in this room is doing life on an escalator, right? And some of you are going up and some of you are going down, but everybody's moving at a slightly different angle, right? So if you're in an escalator going up, even at a small angle, you're walking along, it's great. Life is hunky-dory, right? But if you're on an escalator that's going down and you're trying to run up, it's exhausting. And it's like, so inflation, I think, in many ways is this invisible escalator that's working for you or against you based upon your station of life. And it's one of the things I think that undergirds social unrest, right? It gives the free market a bad name. It makes people
in what
think.
way? Could we dive into that a bit?
Yeah, well, so if you think back to, Occupy Wall Street, right? This sort of left-wing version that's mad at the status quo, rightfully so, right? A lot of those folks are pissed about inflation, the French Revolution, right? The social unrest that you see in this country, people are mad, but to go back to education, they don't really understand what's caused the problem. They're just morally indignant.
Yeah, so if we could dive in a bit to the technical side,
Yeah.
Could you explain the concept of fractional reserve?
Fractional reserve. So, man, we're all over the place tonight.
Yeah, we're going all over.
So the entire world, every significant country in the world has a monetary system that was based upon the Bank of England and now based upon the US Federal Reserve. It's just called fractional reserve banking. It just means that if you put $1 into a bank, they're going to hold on to a fraction of that and they're going to lend out more on top of it. There's nothing inherently wrong with fractional reserve banking, but it can lead to inflation if you're not careful about how you manage the money. And so I was telling Joshua this earlier, that people don't think about it from this perspective, but if you add up every US dollar in the world and every US debt in the world, every dollar denominated debt and every dollar denominated asset, it always equals zero, right? And so modern money is really a function of debt. And that sounds scary. It's just the way that we've done it, right? Outside of gold, right, and Bitcoin, if you will, which are asset-based things, right? They're finite. Gold, I think, is worth about $10 trillion today. Bitcoin, probably a little over $1.5 trillion, right? But there's a finite amount of Bitcoin. There's a finite amount of gold that we can get to, right? So they're hard assets, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to money, which is based upon credit. And again, I'm not opposed to credit. I'm not opposed to money. It's a critical tool, but it's a misunderstood tool. And because it's misunderstood, it can work against us just as much as it can work for you. So there's a lot of sort of like negative connotations around fractional reserve banking, but to me, that's not really the boogeyman here. Fractional reserve banking, credit is critical. So look, I'm a huge Bitcoin fan. I'm sure we're going to talk about that a lot tonight too,
we're about to
right?
move into that.
Web3. At first, I think it was 2013. I can't remember when I went all into Bitcoin. So I think it was in 13. Y'all remember when Greece announced one day that they were going to see some of the money from their, not some of the money, but like the whole country was getting a financial haircut, right? All the citizens. And oftentimes when bonds go bad or debt goes bad on an international level, the debt holders take a haircut. But you very rarely see the citizens of a country pay the price. And so I remember like it was yesterday. It was a Sunday afternoon. I was at church. I have little kids. My daughters love to be pushed on the swing, right? So I'm doing the thing that dads should never do. I'm on the swing, pushing and looking at my phone, right? I'm just terrible. But this thing pops up on my phone about Greece, and I had a minor heart attack. I told my wife, I have an emergency. And so I went to the office and tried to mine Bitcoin in like 2013. I wasn't able to make it work, but that was sort of my beginning. That was my like, oh my God, like what is going to happen if Greece, the birthplace of democracy, woke up today and took away 10% of all their citizens' money?
Wow.
It was a massive, it doesn't get talked about a lot, but that was sort of a big deal when that happened. And so Bitcoin is a super, super hard asset. It's highly deflationary, right? There's 21 million of them. There's an unlimited number of US dollars.
So let's actually,
go ahead.
Sorry, let's go ahead and dive in a bit. Some of our audience might not be familiar. Could you explain what is a blockchain?
Sure.
What's the fundamental concept behind something like Bitcoin?
Yeah. I've been speaking, it's funny, I've been speaking on Bitcoin for so many years, and it's still the same questions,
Yeah.
Years ago, we would have Bitcoin meetups, and this is not true tonight anymore, but everybody who came to a Bitcoin meetup, we used to give away free Bitcoins.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Not like lots of Bitcoins, but like
just like have a Bitcoin?
Yeah. If it was your first night coming to a Bitcoin meetup here in Baton Rouge or New Orleans, like someone would have a little paper wallet and they'd write a code down for you and they would give it to you. And that was just normal. Happened all the time, right? It happened in Vegas at big shows.
Oh,
There was the Bitcoin faucet where if you wanted Bitcoin, just go get one. So Bitcoin started off as just this sort of funny, silly thing that people thought was really, really neat. So what is a blockchain? On the most basic level, I like to think of a blockchain as triple entry bookkeeping, right? So double entry bookkeeping is about 500 years old. We don't think about it like a time before double entry bookkeeping. But today, whether you're, in America or a communist country, there's no other financial system, right? There's debits and credits. Every company in the world, as far as I know, runs on double entry bookkeeping, right? That's how you do it. Your profits, your loss, your balance sheet, double entry bookkeeping. A blockchain, the most basic, simplistic level, is triple entry bookkeeping. It's sort of like saying, all right, the entire world needs to share one Google Sheet. How do we make that happen? So we can all access one Google Sheet, one Excel document at the same time. And so that's what Bitcoin created. And it's been used to create and manage this asset called Bitcoin, which never leaves the blockchain, right? If you think about a key or a wallet, these can be really, really confusing terms because you can't, you take your wallet, you can't unlock it and leave with it.
Yeah, it's all analogies,
right? It doesn't
right?
go anywhere. Yeah, it doesn't go anywhere. It's a data set, right?
Yeah.
It's the world's, I would say, most expensive, slowest database.
So Bitcoin has one of these databases, and there's a lot of other ones, right?
Sure. When Bitcoin came out, it was the first workable blockchain. But there's 2 decades of the crypto punks working on these scenarios. And if you read, how many of you guys have read the Bitcoin white paper? 1 person, 2 people, 3 people? We'll go 2.5 there, right? And so if you read the Bitcoin white paper, it is not an economic treatise at all, right? It's just a technical document.
Yeah.
Right? It's Satoshi Nakamoto saying, okay, here's 4 ideas that we've been working on for a long time, 5 ideas, 3 ideas, and we've put them together in this unique way, a la Bitcoin is born, right? So it's not an economic idea. It was a technical solution designed to create sound money, and it's worked out fabulously well. But a blockchain at the most basic level is a way for all of us to share one database and have confidence that it's correct. Now, a lot of things come off of that, right?
Yeah.
You hear a lot about, I know you were talking about Web3, and so Web3 is a lot about decentralization, right? It's a lot about collaboration without the need for trust. And so if I buy something from you or buy something at this restaurant, most transactions in the world have a trust component.
Yeah.
Right? You trust that I'm the real person that owns this credit card, right? When you swipe the credit card and it goes through, you trust 3 banks on this side, 3 banks on that side. You trust someone's going to pay the bill. Like there's inherent trust built in almost every financial transaction we take, just like there's inherent trust built into how human beings function as a society, right? I trust my wife loves me. I trust my kids will be home when I get home tonight, right? I trust this chair is going to hold me up. Like trust is a big part of what we do. And so Web3 and Bitcoin are trying to serve a different purpose, a critical purpose, which is for people you don't know, how do you trust each other?
So how does blockchain technology help these sort of trustless ecosystems to function?
So by having one central database or decentralized database that we can all rely on, and then no one's in charge, that's the killer app, right? There isn't, so many times people said, oh, I lost my Bitcoin, I better call the 1-800 number. Like if you lose your Bitcoin, you're out of luck. You can't, don't call me, there's nothing to be done, right? Like it's a use at your own risk sort of technology, which is powerful, right? There's not many ways for an unlimited number of people on planet Earth to collaborate together in a sense where they don't have to directly trust each other. There can be trust in other components, but it's creating this foundation where trust can't be violated or broken. Right?
Yeah.
But that's it's a fundamental idea, like double entry bookkeeping is a fundamental idea. It's a fundamental idea like the Gutenberg press, right? What can come from this technology is just incredible.
Yeah, so what are some of the things that you see coming out of that, and what are some things that you might see not changing or not having any advantage on the blockchain?
So I feel like, there has to be a reason to you have to need a trustless or low trust environment to want to use a blockchain. Otherwise, you might as well just use a SQL server or a Google spreadsheet, right? There are lots of cheaper, easier ways to manage data sets, but there are incredible things to use the blockchain for. So for example, I would not want to, use Bitcoin to pay for a cup of coffee, right? It's going to fluctuate in value significantly more than the cost of that cup of coffee while you're in line.
Yeah, and there's transaction costs.
And do you need a permanent record that you bought a grande coffee, right? So the blockchain is also permanent. It gets a lot of slack or heat by being this incredible way to siphon money and move money around. But cash is much better for that.
Yeah.
Right? The blockchain is a permanent public record of a transaction. And so if I do something over here on the blockchain using the same account, the same wallet, whatever, there's a trend, like there's a trail to follow, right?
Yeah.
So sure, I might be quasi private because you don't know those are my keys. But if you ever found out, the whole thing is going to unravel. So the core technology for we're seeing tons of spinoffs, right? So Bitcoin was the first blockchain. Then Ethereum came along trying to be more of a computer version, right? They're chasing very, very different things. Bitcoin came out with proof of work, right? That's sort of famous core blockchain methodology, but it's expensive, right? It's taxing on the environment. It's expensive for power. I tried to convince Steven and Nexus years ago to mine Bitcoin back when it was cheap, right? So Ethereum came along with what's called proof of stake, right? Which is an innovation. Moxey actually has an idea called proof of value that will eventually sit on top of a blockchain. So there's lots of different ways to have the blockchains work. Sometimes people just get caught up and the technology is cool and it sounds neat. But for the most part, NFTs have come along that people sort of laugh about. But so many things that we think of today that are core start off as games, right? I mean, games are a multi-billion-dollar business. I remember years ago when CryptoKitties came out, right? It was sort of the first. It wasn't the word NFT. I don't think existed when CryptoKitties came out. But Dapper Labs went on to start a multi-billion-dollar project with the NBA and the NFL, right? And they started with you would buy a little cat and have 2 cats and 4 cats and 16 cats, right? And you would just collect these little cryptocurrencies. So most blockchains are fungible tokens, right? So fungibility just means that they're all the same, right? If you took a gallon of water, all those water molecules are fungible. There's no different types of water. It's all the same, right? Money's all the same. Moxie dollars are all the same. US dollars are all the same. Bitcoin is all the same. It's a fungible token. An NFT, a non-fungible token, is the opposite. There can only ever be one. And NFTs are exploding right now in the sense that fashion explodes or the sense that art explodes, right? There's some beautiful art in this room, right?
That's true.
And if you go to the Louvre, you can see the Mona Lisa, right? But you could also in the gift store buy a really, really nice print of the Mona Lisa and put it in your house, right? So if you have a print of the Mona Lisa, do you have the Mona Lisa? No, but you have something really, really similar to it, right? And so you should think, I would encourage you guys to think of NFTs like that, right? It's sort of like you can have a real Prada bag or you can have a fake Prada bag, right? Do you want to spend $5,000 or $50? They're both very reasonable things, right? Most people probably just want the $50 knockoff. Every now and then someone wants the $5,000 Prada bag. And so what an NFT does is it gives you proof that you own the actual real McCoy, right? Here in Louisiana, the famous artist, the Blue Dog, I've got some awesome Blue Dog prints at my house, some that he signed, which is neat, but I don't have any actual original Blue Dog artwork. Right? I've just got the next best thing, which is worth far less than the actual thing. So the NFTs are creating this way for people to prove ownership. And I think, one of my favorite examples is, we all came to this restaurant tonight, right? And here you're gonna order beer, and you might get some pizza and some tacos, you're gonna order food, right? But nobody came in here and bought their own clothes, right? We didn't all switch into our Estruma Brewery attire, right? But if you play a video game and you go to the video game, well, you can't bring things with you, right? You might buy a sword there and use that sword or buy a cloak or buy a game or buy a token, but it can't be portable. It can't be taken with you. It can't go from Sega to Nintendo. And so the thing that NFTs are trying to solve is they're trying to build this creator-first environment where the power is going from the Web 2.0 folks, right? The Facebooks of the world, the Twitters of the world, the centralized authority. Web 3 is all about decentralized ownership. It's all about the creators being in control. It's about the artist making the money, not about Spotify, right? And so,
but the power back to the people.
Power to the people. And what it does is it unlocks the ability for private property rights that can be moved and ported from different applications. And that seems like a really, really basic idea, and it is, but it's powerful, right? It's in the sense that blockchain is powerful because it's triple entry bookkeeping. It creates a new way to manage data. An NFT similarly makes a new way for you to actually prove that you own something and take it with you. right? So you can't leave Twitter with your tweets,
Yeah.
right? Like they're just there. But a social media platform built on Web3 would be inherently designed so if you left, you would take your email list with you. You would take your people with you. Now, that would change the benefits, right? It would make it more, it might make it harder for that group to get started, but once it did, it'd be incredibly, incredibly powerful.
So it would kind of change the fundamental economics to stuff based more on ownership, right?
Yeah, and it's not that it changes the concept of ownership, it changes who owns something.
It changes kind of who has the control over
So
a
it
digital
radically
asset.
changes the economic model and the priorities and the way that creators can earn money. You guys have probably heard about this new way the last 5 years or so of play to earn games,
Yeah.
right? Where you're playing these games and you're earning things and you're buying, then you're reselling to other people who want to play these games. And that's great. But what if you could resell to people who want to take those same items and play other games, right? That's the magic really of Web 3.0 is a fundamental change to property rights on a digital level.
So with Web 3.0, if you bought that sword in, let's say, Skyrim, maybe you could port that over to a completely different game.
Exactly. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned proof of value a bit ago.
Right.
Could you dive into that a bit?
Absolutely. So barter exists all over the world, right? Pepsi has said famously, Toyota right now will take soybeans for trucks, in Brazil, right? Barter is constantly happening. Media companies barter, the Saints barter. I mean, you name a big business and they trade, but those trade dollars are sort of stuck in the sense that Web 2.0 is stuck. They can't go anywhere. And so Moxey, we have several $100 million worth of transaction volume. So there's about 4,000 businesses who accept Moxey dollars, and they're constantly buying and selling things. We do probably, a little over $1.5 million a month in volume. And so this amazing data set that helped us analyze, okay, how do we know when a dollar is healthy? If you think about fractional reserve bank in the US dollar inflation, too much money is a bad thing, but also not enough money is a bad thing.
Yeah.
Right? The Great Depression was in many ways caused by a lack of dollars, not too much money, right? And so when you're in control of the monetary policy, you have to spend a lot of time thinking about how many dollars should be in existence and who should have them, and how do you make it fair? How do you have proper rights, proper alignment of responsibilities? And so what we developed is a concept called dynamic reserve banking, which is like fractional reserve banking, but dynamic reserve banking, which adds a third component, which is time. And the concept is that a healthy economy is a moving economy.
Okay.
Right? So you should want to own a certain amount of cash in the bank for savings purposes, right?
Yeah.
But if you're over saving, you're either making a bad decision or something is unhealthy in the economy. Today, the US economy in the world is awash in American dollars, right? Inflation is through the roof because very clearly there's too much money. And so it's constantly trying to find another place. And so proof of value is built on the concept of time, which is you can gauge the healthiness of a dollar based upon how it moves inside the economy. And there's a lot more to it, but that's the most basic idea. And actually Solana, a more recent blockchain that's come along, has a very similar idea, right? It uses a component of time to determine the accuracy of the computers around the world to make sure people are playing fairly. And so we took fractional reserve banking and added a time component to it to develop a concept called dynamic reserve banking. And proof of value says we scale, we can always prove to our Moxey members how healthy their dollar is so we can encourage them to accept it.
Okay, and is that something you see tying into Web3?
I think over time, but we're not in a situation where we want to use Web3 just because it's a cool factor, right? So we're a Web 2.0 company right now, but most Web 3 companies are being built with Web 2.0 technology first, almost by definition, right?
Yeah.
So as Moxey scales, we will eventually use someone's blockchain. It could be Bitcoin, the Lightning Network, it could be Solana, it could be Ethereum, it could be something that hasn't been invented yet. We'll eventually use that so that we can showcase to the world how valuable our currency is. But what's critical for us is we don't want to pay high gas fees, we don't want to pay high transaction costs. We want to move lots of money cheaply around the country and eventually around the world. And so the time component allows us to showcase that our dollar is healthy.
Okay.
And make it so that everybody can see not how much Moxey's in your wallet, but how much Moxey's in existence, right? So if I pulled up, our app today and logged on, I ought to be able to see, oh, someone just bought braces. Someone in Memphis just had barbecue, right? Someone had their lawn cut, right? You just see this constantly sense of dollars moving, and that you can use that data to calculate how healthy the currency is. And so most blockchains are chasing a finite currency like Bitcoin, or they're chasing a different a different use case for blockchain. And Moxey is an entirely third way of thinking about it. We are chasing everyday money, a dynamic revolving credit for small business owners that will eventually be on top of a blockchain. But it's the economic value. We're bringing revalue. We're bringing businesses new customers, better cash flow. Our customers aren't interested in the technology.
Yeah.
They just want to know they pull their wallet out and their Moxey credit card and go to pay for something, that it works. They want to know if they open their door, new customers will come to them because they have a Moxey sticker on the door. So that's what we're all about, is the experience, and the technology empowers the experience, but it's not technology first.
That makes sense. Consumers aren't going to care what technology is powering what they're using.
Yeah. I mean, no one's calling Zuckerberg and saying, hey, are you on, AWS East or West, right? Which Google server are you on? Like, you're kind of curious if you're a Mac or a PC person, maybe, but you want good technology becomes seamless.
Yeah.
Right? In the late 90s, early 2000s, there was internet companies. You don't hear much about internet companies anymore, right? It's not cool to be on the internet. You're just on the internet.
By default.
Yeah. My kids are on the internet. Everyone in this room is on the internet, right? It's like going back in time before books, right?
Yeah.
Books exist, the internet exists, technology is constantly moving and innovating. And our job is to ride the wave and keep making it better and making it better and making it better.
If we could talk governance for a second. So since there's people in the Capitol Hill right now trying to talk to the government about how to handle and respond to crypto, what would you see as being conducive to a healthy crypto, a flourishing crypto economy, I guess, in the US?
So one of the most dangerous things about the government is the old saying, I'm with the government, I'm here to help, right? There's a concept called regulatory capture, which is the idea that larger, well-established businesses benefit from more regulation, not less regulation. So once your company reaches a certain size of success, once you have employees, once you have assets, you look around and all these new people are starting to compete with you, right? You say, hey, that's not right. Maybe someone should pass a law. I don't know if that guy should do what I did 20 years ago.
Yeah.
That's not safe. That's not right. And it's not even malicious. It's just this perspective over time that regulation benefits larger businesses and it hurts smaller businesses. There's classic examples in Louisiana, right? If you want to sell flowers as a florist, right? It's extensive work and tests you have to take to have the ability to sell flowers. Right?
Yeah, the exceedingly dangerous flower.
I'm not sure who grades those tests, but the roses have to be right. Same thing with making caskets, right? This pops up every couple of years when there's monks or somebody making nice wooden caskets and they get sold. No, thank you. Those are not approved by Louisiana state law, right? And so regulatory capture is when the government goes too far. Now, I'm not advocating for anarchy.
Yeah.
Right? There has to be some basic sense of law. Otherwise, there wouldn't be private property rights.
Yeah.
Without a rule sense, there's no Bitcoin, there's no blockchain, right? So it's the sweet spot between tyranny and anarchy that the world has to operate in. And so right now, what you're just seeing is the innovators are constantly pushing the envelope, right? When Uber came out, the laws weren't designed to manage Uber. The laws were designed to operate and manage individual taxi cabs where medallions cost $50,000, which is insane to begin with, right? But all the laws were about protecting the consumers, but eventually the incumbents can use laws that are well-intentioned to actually hurt consumers indirectly because they're stopping competitors from growing. And so that's all that's happening to Bitcoin, but it's what happens to every new industry, right? So you have to figure out, well, who regulates this industry and why? And so I think the most important thing is to give innovators and entrepreneurs room to fail, right? Room to go out and try something and know what the law are. Most people, it's a misconception. Very few people are actually trying to break the laws. Most business owners that I know are actively trying to follow the laws. The challenge you have is you don't know what the law is.
Yeah.
Or you don't know if it's going to be evenly enforced. That is what gets dangerous. And that's where you have tons of unintended consequences when the consumers are actually being hurt. And so I would, encourage the federal government. It's happening in different states. Texas is trying to recruit Bitcoin folks. Wyoming's going at it. Miami's going at it. Lots of states and cities are competing with each other, trying to say, hey, we're going to build this really safe territory. Come build your business here, with the idea being, hey, this might, prosper our community for the next 50 years if we can be early in this cycle.
Yeah, so we're at a junction right now where people are kind of vying to be like a hub, right?
Oh yeah, you see it all the time. If you guys are on Twitter, the mayor of Miami is just going to town recreating Silicon Valley in Miami, and it's working.
Yeah.
It's working. Lafayette tried many years ago to be sort of a Bitcoin hub. They were a little bit too early,
Really?
but they really, really tried. Wyoming as a state is trying to be the hub for Bitcoin. Delaware, decades ago, became the hub for companies, right? Most of the businesses on the planet, I think, are incorporated in Delaware. That was their thing, right?
Yeah.
And they're holding on to that.
And they're really good at it.
And they're really good at it. So competition, it works as long as it's not abused. So that's what the government needs to do. Is just be clear on what the laws are and give entrepreneurs the benefit of the doubt, I think is critical. Otherwise, you're going to wake up one day and Switzerland is going to own Bitcoin, not America. That's the real danger we face as a country. If we can't encourage immigrants to come here and encourage innovation, encourage entrepreneurship, then people will just do it somewhere else.
Yeah, if you're not clear and if you don't have a supportive structure.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And so I think we're just about nearing the end of our time. So
Sure.
I'd like to go over lightning round. Just
Lightning
for fun.
round, you got it.
Yeah. Okay. So a book you've read recently or a book recommendation.
Oh, wow. I'm a huge reader. I recently read this fiction book called The Name of the Wind, which is
Oh, I
fascinating.
love that.
Oh, you read it? Okay,
Yeah.
good.
It's amazing.
I read, I think, was it Jim Collins' Business 2.0? He re-released one of his original books on entrepreneurship. And every now and then I read a book and I just can't finish it because every page I have an idea, I have to stop and write something down.
Yeah.
So this is one of those rare books where I just kept going back to it. So I think it's called Business 2.0 or Business Intelligence 2.0, something like that. One danger of the Kindle, at least from my experience, is once I open a book, I never see the title again. So I just keep reading this book with no reference back to the name of it. If you're looking for a business fiction book, not fiction, a business story, the Shoe Dog. Anybody read Shoe Dog? By the founder of Nike? I laughed until I cried. I mean, I was so pumped, I almost got on a plane and tried to track Phil Knight down. It was an amazing story about how he built Nike. And it's one of the top 10 books I've ever read in my life, frankly. Just incredible.
I'll have to read Shoe Dog.
Yeah, you have to. Go home tonight and get it if you haven't read Shoe Dog.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Podcast you're a fan of, if you're a podcast person.
I love podcasts. I love to work out and listen to podcasts instead of music. I'm inspired by good business stories. And so I listen to a guy named Pomp who has a podcast talking about Bitcoin. I listen to business breakdowns, which will take a business and unpack the industry and how it works, which is just fascinating. So those are two that I really enjoy.
Pop? How do you spell that?
It's Pomp, P-O-M-P.
Oh, P-O-M-P.
P-O-M-P.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's just called the Pomp Podcast. Yeah.
Excellent. And then if you had a short message that you could share with the world, maybe like something you could fit on a billboard, what would that be? Business or non-business related?
Non-business would be family. I've got 4 kids.
Yeah.
And if I could go back in time, I probably would have had kids a little bit earlier. They are a blessing, pure chaos. My house is so unbelievably loud. There are days where I'm like, how do I live in this tiny little building with these 6 people? So love spending time with my family. From a business perspective, I would say focus. We talked about this today. Got 2 of our core staff members here, Amy and Jack. And it's one thing about a business, especially a growing business, is there's lots of opportunities.
Yeah.
Years ago, I got to the point in life where I had so many small businesses at the same time, I was sort of embarrassed to tell people. I was like, you know what? I got to stop mentioning all these businesses.
Yeah, because you've had a lot, right?
I had a lot, right? I had a clothing company, I had a web design company, I was building a ticket app. I just had a lot going on. And I loved it. At my heart, I'm an entrepreneur. Yeah. Like if you have a problem, I have a business, we should start together. That's not a joke, that's true, right? And so what happened was I started a company. I had this great idea. I said, you know what I should do? I should partner up and start this web development company. That way I can incubate all my own businesses myself, right? And that was just like, giving free alcohol to an alcoholic, so it just made it too easy for me to start businesses. So the main thing I learned is focus, right? It's hard to say no to things, but it's critical, right? If you have 100 priorities, you have no priorities. If everybody owns something, nobody owns it, right? And so there's one thing that I learned too late in life, and I still struggle with this, is just focus. Is just figure out a way to say no to something or say not yet.
Learning to say no. Yeah,
just say no.
Just say no to new businesses and alcohol.
Just say no.
Okay.
And alcohol.
And alcohol, yeah, and drugs. Excellent. And then, so you're running a WeFunder round, right?
We're about to kick off a WeFunder round. We raised about $600,000 earlier this year. And if you guys aren't familiar with crowdfunding, I highly, highly recommend it. Today, until recently, it was illegal for non-wealthy people to invest in startups. Perfect example of regulatory capture.
Yeah.
Very well-intentioned law, right? Everybody can buy a lottery ticket. Not everybody can invest in Facebook.
Yeah. And for the record, Charlie did not ask me to bring this up, but they've got a great campaign going on. I plan on putting some money into it.
Hey, well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That's great. Yeah.
Not financial advice, and I'm not a financial advisor. Yeah, but it's a cool campaign. You should check it out.
So we're sort of testing the waters right now, not yet accepting investments. But if you go, I think it's wefunder.com/Moxey. And Moxey, of course, is Moxey. You can watch our videos, hear all about our business. And we have 4,000 businesses that accept Moxey, but we have a goal to help 100,000 businesses. So
yeah, that's a lot.
We're going to build this incredible dynamic platform. And crowdfunding for us has meant our customers could invest in our business. And that's been a game changer for us.
Yeah, it's a cool campaign that you have going on.
You got it.
So yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Really
This has been
enjoyed
great.
this conversation.
Great audience. Thank you all very much.